The one ship that returned far beyond the outer stars, deep inside the territory of the Zephyr Empire, a massive command station floated in silence. It was a structure built for war, covered in dark metal and glowing energy lines, surrounded by defense ships that never powered down. Inside, thousands of officers worked without rest, monitoring signals from across the galaxy. At the center of the command station was the war chamber, a wide circular room filled with floating displays showing maps of star systems, fleet positions, and ongoing campaigns. The Empire had conquered dozens of worlds. Every battle had followed the same pattern. They arrived, they attacked, they won. But this time, something was different. At the center of the room, a large display showed a single line of data. At Earth campaign, status, unknown. That had never happened before. Months ago, the Zephyr Empire had launched one of the largest invasions in its history. A fleet of 1 million warships had been sent to a small blue planet located in a quiet star system. The target was simple: Earth. The reports before the invasion had been clear. The planet was inhabited by humans, a young species, technologically behind compared to most advanced civilizations. Limited space travel, weak defenses, an easy victory. The Empire expected the campaign to end within days, at most, weeks. But now, months had passed, and there had been no communication, no signals, no battle reports, nothing. Inside the war chamber, high-ranking officers stood in silence, staring at the empty data feed. Some tried to explain it. Signal interference, one officer said. The system may be blocking long-range transmissions. Or the fleet is still securing the planet, another suggested. But no one truly believed those explanations. A fleet of 1 million ships does not go silent, not like this. At the front of the chamber stood Supreme Commander Varex, the highest-ranking military leader of the Zephyr Empire. His posture was rigid, his expression cold, but even he could not ignore the growing tension in the room. "This delay is unacceptable," Varex said sharply. "We should have received confirmation of victory long ago." Before anyone could respond, an alert sounded. A sharp tone echoed across the chamber. Every screen flickered. One of the officers stepped forward quickly, his voice suddenly tense. "Commander, we are receiving a signal." The entire room froze. "Source?" Varex demanded. The officer hesitated for a second. Then he answered, "Earth system." A wave of movement spread across the chamber as all attention focused on the central display. The map shifted instantly, zooming in on the distant star system where the invasion fleet had been sent. A single signal appeared. Not a fleet, not a formation, just one. A ship. "Only one?" another officer said in disbelief. "That is correct," the technician replied. "One vessel approaching at low speed." Varex stepped closer to the display. "Identify it." The system scanned the incoming signal. Moments passed. Then the answer appeared. "It is one of ours," the officer said quietly. "A Zephyr warship." The silence in the room deepened. Out of 1 million ships, only one had returned. "Bring it in," Varex ordered immediately. Outside the command station, the lone ship slowly came into view. It did not look like a warship anymore. Its outer armor was torn and burned. Large sections of its hull were missing, exposing internal systems that sparked weakly in the vacuum of space. One of its engines was completely destroyed, forcing it to drift slowly toward the station. It looked like something that had survived a disaster. Not a battle, something worse. Inside the docking bay, crews prepared for emergency arrival. The damaged ship barely made it through the station's shields before collapsing onto the platform with a heavy metallic sound. The moment it stopped moving, medical and security teams rushed forward. The main hatch opened slowly, smoke drifted out. And then, movement. A figure stepped out, one of the crew. But something was wrong. He was not injured, not physically, but his movements were slow, unstable, like someone who had seen something he could not understand. More crew members followed behind him, all the same. No visible injuries, no signs of combat damage on their bodies. But their eyes were filled with fear. Not fear of defeat, not fear of death. Something deeper, the kind of fear that stays after survival. Commander Varex entered the docking bay moments later, surrounded by guards. His eyes scanned the survivors quickly. "How many returned?" he asked. The officer in charge of the docking bay checked the data. "Only this crew, Commander," he replied. "No other ships have been detected." Varex looked back at the damaged warship. 1,000,000 ships had been sent. Only one had come back. He stepped forward, stopping in front of the ship's captain. The captain stood still, staring ahead, silent. "Report," Varex ordered. The captain did not respond. Varex's voice became colder. "I gave you an order. What happened to the fleet?" The captain slowly turned his head. His eyes met Varex's, and in that moment, the entire room felt it. That fear, not confusion, not panic, but something else. The captain's voice was quiet, almost shaking. "We were wrong." Varex narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The captain took a slow breath. Then he said something no one in the Ziffer Empire had ever expected to hear. "We should never have attacked Earth." The room went completely silent. Because whatever happened out there, it was not a battle. It was something far worse. The day the sky was covered, the war chamber remained silent long after the captain's words settled into the minds of everyone present. No one moved. No one spoke. The idea itself felt impossible. The Ziffer Empire had never retreated from a campaign, and it had never feared an enemy. Entire civilizations had fallen before their fleets. Planets had surrendered without a fight. And yet, standing here now, the only survivor of 1,000,000 ships was warning them to stay away. Commander Varex stared at the captain for several seconds, his expression cold but focused. He had led countless wars, and he knew how to read soldiers. This was not the reaction of someone who had simply lost a battle. This was something deeper. "Begin your report," Varex said quietly. "From the moment you entered the Earth system." The captain did not argue. He lowered his head slightly as if preparing himself to relive something he did not want to remember. "It started like every other invasion," he said slowly. The room dimmed as the central display activated, projecting a visual reconstruction based on the ship's recorded data. The scene shifted, and suddenly the officers were no longer inside the command station. They were watching the past. The Earth system appeared before them. A bright yellow star at the center, several planets orbiting around it, and one small blue world. Earth. At first it looked exactly as the reports had described. Blue oceans, white clouds, green land masses. A peaceful world, a weak world. A world that had no chance of defending itself against a fleet of that size. Then the fleet arrived. The display filled with ships, thousands at first, then tens of thousands, then more, until the sky above Earth was completely covered. 1,000,000 warships, the largest invasion force the Ziffer Empire had ever assembled. They were confident, the captain continued. No resistance was expected. The officers watched as the fleet moved into position around the planet. Perfect formation, perfect control. Weapons ready, systems fully active. "We sent the standard warning," the captain said. The display showed a transmission being sent toward Earth. "Surrender immediately. Resistance will result in total destruction." The message was clear. It had worked before. It always worked. The officers leaned forward slightly, watching closely. "What was the human response?" Varex asked. The captain hesitated. "None," he said. A small ripple of confusion moved through the chamber. "No response?" one officer repeated. The captain shook his head slowly. "They received the message. We confirmed it. But they did not reply." The display showed the waiting period. Minutes passed, then hours. The fleet remained in position, waiting for surrender. But Earth stayed silent. They did not panic, the captain continued. They did not mobilize in visible ways. No large fleets launched. No defense formations appeared. The officers exchanged glances. "That makes no sense," one of them said. "A primitive species would respond with fear or aggression." "That is what we believed," the captain replied. On the display, the next phase began. The invasion command was given. "Begin planetary suppression," the fleet command ordered. The first wave of weapons activated. Long-range energy cannons targeted major cities across the planet. Strike patterns calculated, destruction guaranteed. The officers watched as the weapons fired. Bright beams of energy moved toward Earth. Then, they disappeared. Not deflected, not blocked, gone. The room fell silent again. "What happened?" one officer asked. The captain's voice became quieter. "We did not know." The display replayed the moment. The beams reached the atmosphere and vanished. No explosion, no impact, nothing. "They thought it was a system error," the captain continued. "So they fired again." The second wave launched, more powerful, more focused. Again, the beams reached Earth's atmosphere, and again, they disappeared. The officers in the war chamber shifted uncomfortably. That is impossible," someone said under their breath. "That is what we believed," the captain repeated. On the display, confusion spread across the fleet. Ships began recalibrating their weapons, scanning for interference, adjusting targeting systems. They increased power output, the captain said, changed frequencies, tried different attack patterns. The third wave fired, then the fourth, then the fifth. Every time, the same result. Nothing reached the surface. Varex's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the display. "Some form of planetary shield?" he asked. The captain shook his head slowly. It was unlike anything we have ever seen. The display zoomed closer to Earth. The planet still looked peaceful, untouched, no visible defenses, no visible response, just silence. "That is when we realized something," the captain said. The room grew still. "We were not being ignored," he continued. "We were being watched." The officers did not react immediately, but the meaning of those words settled heavily. The display shifted again. Sensors across the fleet began detecting something new. Signals. Faint. Hidden. Not coming from the surface, but from space. Around them. The fleet had not been alone. "Unknown objects began appearing on our scanners," the captain said. "At first we thought they were debris, or interference." The display highlighted small shapes around the massive fleet. Too small to be warships, too organized to be random. "What were they?" Varex asked. The captain's answer came slowly. "We did not know, until they started moving." The objects shifted, fast, silent, and suddenly, the first Scifi warship exploded. No warning, no visible attack, just gone. The officers in the war chamber leaned forward. "What weapon did they use?" someone asked. The captain shook his head again. "We never saw it." On the display, another ship vanished. Then another. Then three more. The fleet began to react, scanning for targets, activating defensive systems. But the objects were everywhere, and nowhere. "They were inside our formation," the captain said. His voice dropped slightly. "Before we even knew they were there." The room became completely silent, because now, this was no longer an invasion. This was something else, something they did not understand, and it had already begun. The enemy they could not see. The war chamber felt colder as the projection continued, and showing the first moments when the Scifi fleet began to lose control of the situation. What started as confusion quickly turned into something far worse. The officers watching the recording leaned forward, trying to understand what kind of force could move through a formation of 1 million warships without being clearly detected. On the display, the alien fleet shifted into defensive formation. Ships moved closer together, energy shields activated, sensor arrays pushed to maximum range. Every known scanning method was deployed at once: thermal, electromagnetic, gravitational, but the results were the same. Nothing, or at least, nothing they could clearly identify. "We thought they were using stealth technology," the captain said, his voice still steady but carrying a deeper tension now. But this was not normal stealth. It was something else. The projection zoomed in on one section of the fleet. A group of heavy cruisers moved into a tight defensive circle, their weapons rotating slowly as they searched for targets. Then one of them disappeared. Not exploded, not damaged. Gone. The officers in the chamber exchanged uneasy looks. "Rewind," one of them said. The system replayed the moment. The cruiser was there, then it wasn't. No flash, no debris, no energy signature, just empty space. The captain continued speaking. "At that moment, we understood something important. We were not dealing with a visible enemy." Commander Varex crossed his arms slightly, watching carefully. "Then what were you dealing with?" he asked. The captain did not answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward the display. "Watch." The projection shifted again. More ships began to vanish. Some disappeared instantly, like the cruiser before. Others showed brief signs of damage, systems failing, lights flickering, before they went silent and drifted out of formation. Then the signals cut completely. The fleet commanders began issuing orders across all channels. "Maintain formation. Lock all weapons on unknown targets. Activate full-spectrum scans." But the commands had little effect. The enemy was already inside their system, not just around them. Inside. "They were in our networks," the captain said quietly. That statement caused a reaction in the war chamber. "In your systems?" one officer repeated. The captain nodded slowly. "Our targeting systems began to fail. Navigation controls lagged. Communication channels were disrupted. It was not random. It was controlled." The display showed warning messages appearing across multiple ships at once, systems shutting down, sensors giving false readings, weapons firing at empty space. "They were not just attacking us physically," the captain continued. "They were breaking us from the inside." The realization spread across the chamber. This was not just a battle, this was a complete system takeover. Commander Varex's expression hardened slightly. "Artificial intelligence?" he asked. The captain hesitated. "More advanced than anything we have ever encountered," he replied. On the display, the chaos grew worse. Ships began firing on incorrect coordinates. Some even turned their weapons on Allied vessels by mistake. Confusion spread rapidly through the fleet, breaking the perfect formation into scattered groups. And that was when the next phase began. "They started showing themselves," the captain said. The projection shifted again. This time, shapes appeared. Small, fast, unlike traditional warships. They moved in sharp, precise patterns, appearing for only seconds before disappearing again. Their design was unlike anything in the Ziffer database: smooth, dark surfaces with no visible weapons or engines. "They were human ships," the captain said. The room became completely silent. "Impossible," one officer said. "Humans do not have that level of technology." The captain did not argue. "That is what we believed," he said. The display showed one of the small ships moving through the battlefield. It passed between two large Ziffer cruisers without being detected. As it moved, one of the cruisers suddenly lost power and drifted out of formation. No explosion, no visible attack. Just silence. "They did not fight like us," the captain explained. "They did not rely on large fleets or direct confrontation. They used speed, precision, and control." More human ships appeared, each one moving independently, each one targeting specific systems. They did not waste energy. They did not miss. "They were dismantling us," the captain said. The projection zoomed out. The scale of the situation became clear. Thousands of Scifi ships were already gone, and the humans had barely revealed themselves. The fleet commanders tried to respond. They launched counterattacks, deployed heavy weapons, attempted to track the human ships, but every attempt failed. "They were always one step ahead," the captain said. "As every move we made, they had already prepared for it." The officers in the chamber watched in silence as the once perfect invasion force began to collapse. 1 million ships, losing, not to a larger force, not to stronger weapons, but to something they could not fully see, something that understood them better than they understood it. Commander Varric spoke again, his voice lower now. "Why did they not destroy you immediately?" he asked. The captain looked at him. "That is the part we did not understand at first," he said. The display shifted one more time. The human ships pulled back slightly, creating distance. The Scifi fleet, damaged and confused, tried to regroup. For a brief moment, the battle slowed. "They were testing us," the captain said. The meaning of those words settled heavily in the room. "I'm not attacking blindly, not rushing, studying, learning, adapting." And when they were done, the captain continued, his voice quieter than before, "They changed everything." The projection froze, because what came next was not a battle anymore. It was a decision. When humans decided to fight, the war chamber remained completely silent as the projection resumed. The officers of the Scifi Empire watched carefully, but now their expressions had changed. What they were seeing was no longer a simple battle report. It was a slow and controlled collapse of one of the largest fleets ever assembled, and at the center of it all were humans. On the display, the human ships that had been moving silently through the battlefield suddenly changed their behavior. Until now, they had been observing, disabling, and weakening the Scifi fleet. But that phase was over. "They finished studying us," the captain said quietly. Commander Varric did not speak, but his attention sharpened. The projection showed the human ships pulling back into formation for the first time. Small groups began to align in perfect coordination, spreading across the battlefield in calculated positions. Their movements were no longer random or hidden. They were preparing. "For a moment we thought they were retreating," the captain continued. "Some of our commanders believed we had forced them back." A few officers in the war chamber exchanged looks. "That was your mistake," one of them said under his breath. The captain nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "It was." On the display, the Scifi fleet attempted to reorganize. Large command ships sent out orders, and trying to rebuild structure and regain control. Defensive lines were formed again, weapons recalibrated, and damaged ships were pulled toward the rear. For a brief moment, it looked like the fleet might recover. Then everything changed. The human ships moved, fast, faster than before. This time they did not disappear. They attacked. The first wave struck the outer edge of the Scifi formation. A series of small, precise strikes hit key command vessels. Not random targets, not weak points. The most important ships. Within seconds, multiple command ships lost control. Orders stopped. Coordination failed. Confusion returned. "They targeted leadership first," the captain explained. "Not for destruction, but for disruption." The officers in the chamber leaned forward. The strategy was clear now. Break communication. To break structure, break control. Then the second wave came. Human ships moved deeper into the formation, targeting weapon systems. Large cannons that had once been able to destroy entire cities suddenly went silent. Energy cores failed. Targeting systems shut down. "They were disabling our ability to fight," the captain said. The projection showed several Scifi ships attempting to fire back, but their shots missed completely. Some weapons fired in the wrong direction. Others failed to activate at all. They had control of the battlefield, the captain continued, not just physically, but systemically. Commander Varex's expression darkened slightly. They controlled your fleet, he said. The captain gave a slow nod. More than we realized at the time. The third wave followed immediately. This time, it was destruction. Human ships focused their attacks on isolated targets, ships that had lost communication, ships that could not defend themselves, ships that had been cut off from the main formation. One by one, they were eliminated. But not with massive explosions, not with overwhelming force, with precision. Each attack was calculated, each strike was final. The officers watched as entire sections of the Scifi fleet disappeared, not in chaos, but in order. It was not a random collapse, it was controlled. They were not fighting a war, the captain said. The room remained still. They were executing a plan. The projection zoomed out again. The scale of the destruction became clearer. Thousands of ships were gone, then tens of thousands. And the number kept rising. The Scifi fleet, once organized and powerful, was now scattered and confused. Desperation began to appear in their movements. Some ships tried to retreat, others attempted to regroup, but every move they made was already anticipated. They predicted everything, the captain said. The display showed one group of ships attempting to escape the battlefield. They accelerated toward the edge of the system, engines pushed to maximum output. For a moment, it looked like they might succeed. Then human ships appeared in front of them, blocking their path, waiting. The Scifi ships tried to change direction, but it was too late. They were surrounded, eliminated within seconds. They controlled space itself, the captain continued. Every direction we moved, they were already there. The officers in the war chamber said nothing, because now the truth was becoming clear. And this was not a battle between two forces. This was something else, something one-sided. Commander Varex spoke again, his voice lower than before. How long did this continue? He asked. The captain looked at him. Not long, he said. The answer surprised some of the officers. Not long? One of them repeated. You lost 1 million ships. The captain's expression remained serious. Yes, he said. And that is the most terrifying part. The projection showed the battlefield again. The timeline indicator appeared. What they had assumed was a long war was not. The entire collapse of the Scifi fleet happened in less than a day. The room fell into complete silence. Commander Varex did not move, because now the scale of what they were facing had changed. This was not just a powerful enemy. This was a species that could observe, adapt, and eliminate a force of 1 million ships in hours. The captain took a slow breath. And then, he said quietly, they sent us a message. The projection paused, because what came next was not an attack. It was something far more unsettling. A warning. The message humans sent the war chamber remained completely silent as the captain's final words echoed through the room. A message. After destroying one of the largest fleets ever assembled, the humans had chosen to communicate instead of finishing what they started. That alone was enough to make every officer uneasy. Commander Varex stepped closer to the central display. Play it, he ordered. The projection shifted again. The battlefield appeared, but it was no longer filled with movement. The chaos had ended. And the remains of the Scifi fleet drifted through space, damaged ships, silent wreckage, and scattered debris. Out of 1 million warships, only a small number still functioned, and even those were barely operational. Then something changed. A signal spread across every remaining Scifi ship. Not a forced intrusion, not a system takeover, a direct communication request. They opened a channel, the captain said quietly. Not just to one ship, to all of us at once. The officers in the chamber leaned forward. The display showed the signal stabilizing. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the message began. At first, there was no image, only a voice, calm, clear, human. "This is Earth Defense Command," the voice said. "No emotion, no anger, just control. You have entered a restricted system without permission." The simplicity of the statement made it even more unsettling. No mention of battle, no mention of loss, as if what had just happened was expected. Routine. The voice continued. "Your fleet has been neutralized." The word echoed in the chamber. Neutralized. Not destroyed, not defeated, neutralized. As if it had been necessary. As if it had been planned. The projection flickered slightly, and an image appeared. A human. Not wearing armor. Not sitting in a warship, but inside a command center. Surrounded by quiet screens and controlled systems. The human's face was calm, focused, and completely without fear. "This engagement was a defensive response," the human continued. "You were given an opportunity to communicate. You chose aggression." The officers in the war chamber shifted slightly. There was no threat in the voice. But there didn't need to be. The evidence was already floating in space. The human paused for a brief moment, then spoke again. "You are no longer considered an active threat." The captain lowered his head slightly as he remembered that moment. For a second, hope had appeared. Maybe it was over. Maybe they would be allowed to retreat. But then, the human finished the message. "You will be allowed to leave." A quiet ripple moved through the chamber. Allowed, not forced, not defeated. Allowed. The difference was clear. The human's eyes remained steady as he looked directly into the transmission feed. "This is your only warning," he said. The silence that followed felt heavier than any battle. "Do not return." The transmission ended. No final threat, no dramatic conclusion, just silence. The projection froze. Back in the war chamber, no one spoke for several seconds. Commander Varex's eyes remained fixed on the image of the human commander. "They destroyed your fleet," he said slowly, "and then let you leave." The captain nodded. "Yes." "Why?" another officer asked. "Why not finish the attack?" The captain took a moment before answering. "Because they didn't need to," he said. The meaning settled into the room. The humans had not shown mercy because they were weak. They had shown restraint because they were in complete control. The projection resumed briefly. The surviving Scifi ships, damaged and barely functioning, began to move away from Earth. No human ships followed. No further attacks came. And they were simply allowed to go. But as they retreated, something else became clear. "They were still watching us," the captain said. The display showed faint signals around the remaining ships. Human presence, constant, silent, ensuring they left, ensuring they did not turn back. "They guided us out of the system," the captain continued. "Not by force, but by presence." The officers in the chamber understood what that meant, even in retreat. The Scifi fleet was not free. It was being escorted, controlled, observed. Commander Varex finally looked away from the display. "For a species we believe to be weak," he said quietly, "they showed remarkable discipline." The captain's voice lowered slightly. "They showed something else too." Varex looked at him. "What?" The captain's answer came slowly. They showed restraint." The room fell silent again, because that was the most dangerous part. A species that could destroy a fleet of 1 million ships and choose not to finish it was not just powerful, it was in control, and control was far more dangerous than force. The captain took a slow breath. "And that is when we understood," he said. The officers waited. "We were never invading Earth," the captain continued. His voice carried a quiet weight now. "We were walking into something they had already prepared." The war chamber remained completely still, because now, the question was no longer what happened to the fleet. The question was, what exactly had they awakened? What Earth was hiding? The war chamber felt heavier than before, as if the space itself had changed. No one spoke immediately after the captain's last words. The projection still hovered in the center, showing the frozen image of Earth from a distance, quiet, blue, and peaceful. But now, no one in the room saw it as weak. Commander Varek slowly turned back toward the captain, his expression sharper than before. "You said this was prepared," he said. "Explain." The captain nodded slowly, as if he had expected that question. "At first, we thought it was just advanced defense systems," he said. "Hidden ships, strong AI, unusual technology. But as we retreated, we started to see more." The projection shifted again. This time, it did not show the battle. It showed the retreat. The few surviving Scifi ships moving slowly away from Earth, damaged and barely operational. Behind them, the human presence remained invisible but detectable. Faint signals, constant tracking, controlled observation. "We began scanning everything," the captain continued, "not just for threats, but for patterns." The display zoomed out beyond Earth's orbit, past the planet, past the nearby satellites, and into deeper space within the system. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but then small markers began to appear, hidden objects, thousands of them. "What are those?" one officer asked quietly. The captain answered, "Defense nodes." The room became still. The display highlighted them one by one. They were not large, not like warships, but they were everywhere, positioned across the system in perfect alignment. "They were not activated during the early phase of the battle," the captain explained. "They stayed hidden, silent." The projection continued to zoom out. More nodes appeared. Then more, then even more, until the entire system was filled with them. A network, massive, complex, invisible until you looked closely. "They were surrounding us," the captain said. The realization hit the room all at once. The Scifi fleet had not just entered a system, it had entered a structure. Commander Varek stepped closer to the display. "This is not just defense," he said. The captain nodded. "No," he replied. "It is a complete control network." The projection shifted again, showing lines connecting the nodes. Energy paths, data streams, movement coordination. Everything was connected. Everything was controlled. "They were not reacting to our invasion," the captain continued. "They were guiding it." That statement caused visible reactions among the officers. "Guiding?" one of them repeated. The captain looked at him. "They allowed us to move deeper into the system," he said. "They allowed us to take position around Earth. They allowed us to believe we had control." The silence in the chamber deepened, because now the truth was clear. The Scifi fleet had not been attacking freely. It had been moving exactly where the humans wanted it to go. "They led us into the center," the captain said, "into the most controlled area of their network." The projection showed the fleet's original formation, perfectly positioned, perfectly exposed, surrounded. Commander Varek's voice lowered. "A trap," he said. The captain did not hesitate. "Yes." The word echoed in the chamber. For the first time, no one argued. No one questioned it, because the evidence was undeniable. The projection continued. More data appeared. Records recovered during the retreat. Fragments of human transmissions, encrypted signals, patterns that had not been noticed during the battle. "They have been preparing for a long time," the captain said. "Long before we arrived." The display showed faint signals extending beyond the Earth system, outward, into deep space. They are watching more than just their own planet, the captain continued. They are monitoring surrounding systems, tracking movement, predicting potential threats. One of the officers frowned. How long? He asked. The captain answered quietly. We do not know. The uncertainty made the room even more tense, because it meant one thing. This was not a new system. This was not a recent development. This was something built over time, carefully, silently. Commander Varex looked back at the image of Earth. That planet, he said slowly, is not what we believed it to be. The captain nodded. No, he said, it is not. The projection shifted one last time. This time, it showed something different. A human fleet. Not the small ships from the battle. Larger vessels, hidden further away from the main conflict. They had not even joined the fight. They had just been there, waiting, observing. Those ships never engaged us, the captain said. Why? One officer asked. The captain's answer came with quiet weight. Because they didn't need to. The meaning settled heavily across the chamber. If the smaller hidden ships were enough to destroy 1 million warships, then what were those larger ships capable of? Commander Varex remained silent for a long moment, and then he asked the final question. If they have this level of control, why have we never detected it before? The captain looked at him. Because they did not want to be seen, he said. The room fell completely silent. Because now, everything made sense. Humans were not weak. They were not unprepared. They were not behind. They were hidden, and they had chosen when to reveal themselves. The captain took a slow breath. And now, he said quietly, they know we are watching them. The weight of that statement settled over the entire war chamber, because this was no longer about a failed invasion. This was about something far more dangerous. A species that had been silent was no longer hiding. The warning that changed an empire. The war chamber of the Scifi Empire had never felt this silent before, not after defeat, not after loss. But this was not just loss. This was something deeper, something that had changed the way every officer in that room understood the galaxy itself. The projection of Earth still hovered in the center, glowing softly, calm, and untouched, as if nothing had ever happened there. But now, no one in that room saw it as a simple planet anymore. Commander Varex stood still for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the image. Around him, the highest-ranking leaders of the Empire waited, but no one dared to speak first. The weight of the captain's report had settled into every mind present. 1 million ships, gone. Not in a long war, not in a desperate struggle, but in hours. Controlled, calculated, allowed. Varex finally turned slowly toward the captain. You said they gave you a warning, he said. Do you believe they meant it? The captain did not hesitate this time. Yes, he said. No emotion, no doubt, just certainty. The room reacted quietly. Some officers shifted. Others looked down at the data in front of them, as if hoping to find something they had missed. But there was nothing left to analyze. The truth was already clear. One of the senior strategists stepped forward, his voice careful but firm. Commander, we still have the resources to launch a second invasion, a larger one, better prepared. We now understand their tactics. We can adapt. A few officers nodded in agreement. That was the way of the Scifi Empire. If something failed, they returned stronger. But before Varex could respond, the captain spoke again. That will not work. The words cut through the room. The strategist turned sharply. You are in no position to... It will not work, the captain repeated, his voice still calm but stronger now. You are thinking like this was a battle we lost. It was not. The room fell silent again. The captain stepped forward slightly, his eyes moving across the officers, making sure they understood every word. "We did not lose because we were weaker," he said. "We lost because we were allowed to fight in a system they completely controlled." No one interrupted him this time. "They knew where we would arrive. They knew how we would form our fleet. They knew how we would attack," he continued. "And they prepared for all of it before we even entered their space." The strategist frowned. "Then we change our approach." The captain shook his head slowly. "They will already know that approach too." The words settled heavily. Commander Varex finally spoke. "Enough." The room went still immediately. Varex stepped forward, his presence commanding full attention. "What you are suggesting," he said to the strategist, "is that we repeat the same mistake against an enemy that learns faster than we do." The strategist lowered his head slightly, but did not argue further. Varex turned back toward the central display. For the first time in his long career, he was not looking at a target. He was looking at a decision. The image of Earth remained calm, silent, watching. "Tell me something," Varex said without turning. "When they allowed you to leave, did they follow?" The captain answered immediately. "Yes." The room tensed slightly. "For how long?" Varex asked. The captain took a slow breath. "Until we crossed the edge of their system," he said. "Hi, and even then." "I am not sure they stopped." That answer changed everything, because it meant one thing. The humans did not just defend their space, they monitored it, beyond their borders, beyond their world. Commander Varex slowly raised his hand. The central display shifted. The image of Earth zoomed out. The surrounding systems appeared, then more, then more. For the first time, the Scifi Empire was not looking at a target planet. They were looking at a region, a zone of influence, a space that might already be under human observation. Varex's voice lowered. "This is no longer an invasion scenario," he said. "This is a boundary." No one spoke, because everyone understood. A boundary meant something simple. Cross it, and there would be consequences. Varex turned to face the room. The Scifi Empire does not retreat," he said. The officers straightened slightly. "But it does not act without understanding." He paused, then gave the order no one expected. "All military operations toward the Earth system are to be suspended, indefinitely." The words echoed across the chamber. Some officers looked surprised, others looked relieved, but none of them argued, because they had seen the truth. Varex continued. "Redirect resources to observation and intelligence," he said. "We do not approach. We do not engage. We do not provoke." He looked back at the captain. "And we listen." The captain lowered his head slightly. "Yes, Commander." The war chamber slowly began to move again, but the atmosphere had changed. This was no longer a place preparing for conquest. It was a place that had just learned fear, not fear of destruction, but fear of something they did not control. As the meeting ended, the projection of Earth remained in the center of the room, quiet, unmoving. But now everyone understood what it truly was. Not a weak world, not an easy target, but something else entirely, a warning. And somewhere far beyond their sensors, human systems continued to watch, silent, patient, waiting, because they had already made their message clear. They did not need to chase their enemies. They did not need to prove their strength again. They only needed one thing, for the galaxy to remember. What happened to the million ships that came too close?